Have you suffered a loss, whether it's a big loss or a small loss? And by the way, that's actually, I always say that stress is like beauty. It lies in the eyes of the beholder. So really what might be a really stressful loss to one person may not be to another, but at the same time, whatever you're feeling, whether it's big or small, it's all important. So today, what we're going to take a look at is whatever it is that you're dealing with. We're going to talk to someone today who you're going to love, because she's going to talk about how you heal. And, is there a way to deal with the loss when it takes it from fear to and aversion to curiosity, awe, and really building in that hope? And that's what we're going to talk about today. It's an interesting thing, because we're going to talk about death and loss, but in some ways there's going to be a beauty that gets weaved into it today. So I'm really excited for you to meet Dr. Michelle and Peticolas. And we didn't practice your last name, so dear Lord, I hope I'm saying it right, but we'll get it. Well, if not, she's going to correct me. But anyway, my name is Cheryl Bassett, and I am founder of Unstoppable Connections and international bestseller and creator of the award-winning Unstoppable Family Meeting Toolkit. I am also host of this show, Kitchen Table Conversations, as part of the Edge Network. Families do tap into my 4 gifts, which I've gotten to share, which is a reflection of my family's journey and how we took a time and really built a foundation of trust, and how we could sit down and connect with each other in a way where everyone felt honored in that process. If you would like to learn more about the 4 gifts or my work for connecting families, you can go to unstoppableconnections.com. And if you have an idea for this show, or you'd like to be on the show, you can also reach out to me at kitchentableconversations.com. Now, I like to take and set an intention for every show. And I want to do that I just feel like it's so important. On this show, we really cover what I call the fun stuff to the tough stuff and everything in between. And today might fall more on that tough stuff side, right? In terms of where we are in life. But they're all designed, every topic and idea that we bring here is designed to ignite a conversation, to strengthen our families, and to create a positive ripple out into the world. So we also tap into one of the gifts, which is the 4th gift, the gift of love. And we unwrap that gift by choosing to celebrate ourselves and others. So it's with that intention, that heart, and that openness that we come today to celebrate our guest for the show today, which is Dr. Michelle. I'll say right now, and then she make sure I said her last name correctly, because we didn't practice that. But she is an international best-selling author, award-winning speaker, and life transformation coach with a Ph.D. in Sociology and Psychology and over 30 years of experience. She helps women and men in their life make life makeover after a crisis or the loss of an important relationship. She's appeared on Voice America's Empowering Women and Leadership Stars, BBM Global Network's Courage to Overcome, and KPFA's Women Magazine. She is a co-author and #1 bestseller for Breaking Barriers, and the #1 international bestseller for Step Into Your Brilliance and Animal Legacies. So with that, yay, I'm going to bring on Dr. Michelle. And did I say your last name right?
It was fine.
It was good.
It's a French last name, and you know how the French are about last consonants. They usually don't pronounce them. So the French pronunciation is Peticolas. But I go either way. I sometimes tell people Peticolas, like Pepsi-Cola, Peticola. Yeah. And that actually helps people to remember the name.
I would have enjoyed saying that. Peticola.
Peticola. Yeah.
Peticola. Nice. I like that. I like it way better than what I said. So anyway, we've talked a number of times. I mean, we've talked before. I just have called you Dr. Michelle. So there you go. So I like to start off by really kind of delving a little bit into you and why it is, like, how did you land where you landed? What was the your passion that brought you to what it is that you do?
Interestingly, for almost 50 years of my life, I was living one of those lives of quiet desperation. I had totally tamped down my emotions, and I had become what you call a people pleaser. And so everything I did was according to what I thought I should do as a good girl. Mm-hmm. Now, the first thing that happened was that my first husband left me. And that kind of blew me away. And eventually I went and actually got some help in emotional healing, early childhood healing, because I was on the edge of embarking on a new relationship. And I knew that if I didn't get my abandonment issues handled, that I was going to create that problem again. And just after I did that healing, both my parents died. First, my father from Alzheimer's, and then my mother from breast cancer. And it was just before my mother died that she conveyed to me that she had regrets for not finishing certain projects. My mother was the poster child of living your passion. She was an artist. She was a toy designer. She took her toys to major toy companies in New York and sold them. Now, she didn't make $1 million, but she had a great time. And if she had regrets, where did that leave me? Between doing the early childhood healing and my emotions coming back online, experiencing my parents' loss, and that message of what are you doing with your life, it totally broke me open. The first thing I did was make a documentary film series called Secrets of Life and Death, in which I explored this process, this whole phenomena of death. What's it like to face death? My mother couldn't tell me. What is it like to care for somebody who's dying? I was terrible. And how do you grieve? And doing the film series actually was my way of grieving and stepping into my power and doing something that I had to do instead of pleasing anybody else. And I'll tell you, many, many times I had a lot of fear that I was doing the wrong thing, that I would be embarrassed, that people would call, what are you doing? Why are you wasting your money? And of course, making a film, 3 films, it's expensive. I think I spent over $40,000 or $50,000 in the end.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's shoestring. There's no way around it.
And so we're going to put up a link later on the show for your website, but I assume that's something they could all find on your website as well once we share that.
Well, they can find what?
Your films, yeah. Where they
can find the what's the word? The trailers, and then if they want to purchase them, they're very, very expensive right now. If they actually want to.
Gotcha. Very cool though. I love that. So that's a piece I didn't know about. So we'll have to definitely share it so they can go check out the trailers for that. So let's then, so obviously, and I love that because everybody lands where they land for a reason, right? There's a story in how they got there. And obviously you're no exception to that because that's how you take this beautiful journey. But how is it you started working then with others?
So after I finished the films, it's like, hello, what do you do then? You have to get them out into the world. What I thought was that when I finished the films, like The Field of Dreams, they would come. They did not come. I had to promote them. So I started doing workshops. And I kept on thinking that as I did workshops and film screenings, somebody would show up and say, oh, we love your films. Let us produce them or promote them for you. And that didn't happen. And so I actually did a lot of work. I got a couple of grants. I took it to the cancer community. And so I was dealing with a lot of workshop time with people who were dealing with loss every day. And at the same time, when I started the films, I joined hospice as a volunteer, and I ended up doing hospice support groups, particularly partner loss specifically. And I did that for, 5 or 6 years, not to mention hospice for 10 years. And in that process, I realized that I had something really special to provide people who were dealing with grief and loss. In fact, it was really clear to me that the way in which our culture handles grief and loss is wrong. And so that became my mission, was to teach people a different way of dealing with grief and loss. And a lot of it has to do with handling the emotions, releasing the emotions. I worked with a client one time. She came to me, she had been grieving the loss of her husband. And I mean actively grieving, like tears, for over 20 years.
Oh my.
And every time she would see her son, who was an adult, she would cry because he reminded her of her husband. And she'd seen psychotherapists, psychoanalysts, psychiatrists, the works. She came to me and she stopped the crying within a month. That's how fast the work is.
Wow.
Because once you get what it is, it actually changes. And then the next part of the work that I do is that I allow people to use that grief as a motivator, as fuel for what it is that you need to do next in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I see grief as a gateway. You know how the old story, every door that closes, another one opens.
Right. Right. So what is it? So like, if you're going to say, like, I mean, there's probably many things that we do wrong. I mean, I can remember when my grandfather passed away, my mom, grieved, and instead of dealing with it, like she did very briefly, because then she decided, no, like, I'm not going to, like, and I'm going to guess this is one of the things people do wrong, right? So she started doing everything like to not do it. So she was taking something in the morning to make her excited and happy, and then in the afternoon something to chill her out, and then something to make her sleep. And it's like her whole life was passing by her, and it was just like this blur, and she wasn't really allowing herself to feel the emotions.
And that's it. We don't allow ourselves. And the thing is that when I work with people, I can help them release an emotion in 2 minutes or less. It
Wow.
doesn't have to go along, but you have to really focus on it. And we are all taught, I was taught, to not feel, because the feeling is uncomfortable and we are afraid we're going to fall down into the dragon pit and we're never going to get out. And so having somebody hold you and say, it's okay, it actually, you're going to be okay. And I can't tell you how many times I've been on the phone with a client and led them into their feelings. And at the beginning, they are terrified of facing those feelings. And then afterwards, it's like, oh, that wasn't so bad. That was actually great. So that's the number one key, is to allow the feelings.
So lifting it. So here's my burning question then. Somebody who is ready to let go, is it different than somebody who's not ready to let go? Like, if somebody comes to you and says, I really want to be able to move on in my life, can you work with me? Versus somebody who's like said, I really am not, I don't want to let go. Like, because that feels like they're letting go of the person or the situation.
Yes. So, yes. And I certainly talk to people about that. What is the gain that you're getting out of holding on to the grief? And I've run into many people. In fact, when I first took on that support group, that partner loss support group, there were women in that group that had been there for over 2 years, and they had totally enshrined their husbands. And I offered them an opportunity to change. Now, some people, they want to stay with that persona. They enjoy the persona of widow and the extra sympathy they get, or they enjoy like the victim mode. I've also talked to women who have had multiple losses, and they keep on accumulating them, almost like notches on a gun, or, it's like, oh, look at how much I've suffered. And that becomes their identity.
I was going to say, it's like a label they can give themselves, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that becomes who they are. The thing is that after you lose somebody, your whole personality, who you are, gets shifted. Because if it's somebody who is significant in your life, they have partly defined who you are. And now you have to define the new you. And there's this stuff going on in our brains, the neural nets in our brain. So the brain has experienced like a black hole in a part of the brain where you've lost somebody, and you have to create new nets to bridge that over. And in the first few months, you're very disorganized because it's like you can't even focus. You're actually healing physiologically. But it's a very critical time, because you can fall into the past and decide that that's your new life, is holding on to that. And there have been many women who have taken their husband's projects, and that becomes their whole new life. And then there are women who enshrine, like I talked about, or then there are people who see the meaning of it as what does this say for me? What do I need to do in my life? So when I lost my mother, what I needed to do in my life was to create a film. That was what I needed. I needed to share the message. Life is short. Life, we never know when we're going to go.
Right.
And you don't want to die with regrets.
Yeah. Yes. So, okay. I mean, it's really beautiful in a way, right? Because we all came here to experience these things, right? And this is part of that journey. So let's say though, because I think you and I talked a little bit before the call about, or before the show, that sometimes there's this unwillingness to share with kids.
Yes. Well, we have this idea that we're protecting them. You know, you're a mom, you're a dad, you want to protect your children. You don't want them to suffer. Unfortunately, that actually is more traumatic than if you are honest with them and you talk, because kids, the younger they are, the more spiritual they are, the more attuned they are. And when you invite them into your journey and your process, they're going to feel less fearful. Because when you shut down, they feel that you shut down and they feel like it's something they did. What did I do wrong? Why are you shutting me off? Why are you preventing me from experiencing you? So even a baby, you want to realize that a baby, if you've had a significant loss, they're going to feel it. Pre-cognitive, pre-verbal. And the main thing you need to do is to invite them along on the journey. Let them feel part of that. Love them. Make them feel safe. Mm-hmm. That's critical. I have worked with so many different women who have had early childhood trauma. And from an adult perspective, it seems minor. Like there was this one woman I knew that I worked with that had pneumonia before she was 1 year old. And they put her in an isolation unit. Mm-hmm. And that was so traumatizing because she was pre-cognitive, she was pre-verbal, and being alone is extremely traumatic for her because of that event.
Yes. Yeah. So you bring up a point, and again, I'm loving that you just roll with me here but you're like, there's fascination for me around this concept too, that like kids, and you're bringing it all up, right? From 0 to 7, there's like such a core foundation of beliefs that get built in too, right? So especially when kids are, even if you don't think they can understand, if they can feel those emotions you're feeling, right? They start to, and if they can start to understand some of it, they're actually going to take these on as some of their foundational core beliefs too. Is that?
Well, and in addition, not only the beliefs, but they develop behavior patterns. So remember, I started out by saying I was a people pleaser. I became a people pleaser because when I was 2 years old, my father was in the military. He was transferred to Japan. And in the few months that we were separated, the bond broke. It was never restored after that. And I had already by that time decided there was something wrong with me. 2 years old, that's when you just start stepping into who you are as a separate person. Mm-hmm. I decided that whoever I was not liked, was not good. And I decided the way to make sure that I got the love that I needed was to reach out and figure out what other people wanted and give it to them. And the problem is it worked really well for years. I mean, teachers love people pleasers.
Yeah.
And parents love people pleasers. And so it gets rewarded over and over and over again. But it really holds us back from being in our power. And you can imagine that if you come into a family and you're the mother and you're a pleaser, that's a very dangerous position, because then your children manipulate you. Yes. Children are, really attuned to that kind of thing, and they will use you.
Yeah. Well, they probably don't even realize they are. They just like, that's
of course not.
So of course, like, well, why wouldn't, mom just do this for me because that's what mom does, right?
Oh,
so
right.
Yeah, definitely a learned, see, I grew up in chaos. And as a result of that chaos, I have a really high tolerance for chaos to the point where people would be looking at me like, how is it you're okay with that? And I'm like, well, like for me, right? So I had to really dig in, and a lot of it happened when I was young,
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes people get addicted to chaos because when you're in chaos, it actually stimulates certain chemistry to be released in your body to handle the chaos. Mm-hmm. And people get attached or used to that drama. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that I've noticed from people who are brought up in chaos is they develop very, very high skills in control, in managing situations. Mm-hmm. And that works really well in the work world, but sometimes becomes a problem in the relationship field because people do not like to be controlled.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because, and I've done so much, that digging in work myself, but like, I feel like I sort of like I wanted to do the opposite. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like I think you either repeat behaviors that you were taught as a kid, or else you choose, like, I consciously choose different, right? And I feel like I kind of fell more into that category. But I do still have this, like, it takes a lot for me to go, wow, this really is kind of chaotic. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I can roll with stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and it might not even produce a blip on your radar,
Yes.
because you're used to it and you know how to handle it, and you're really, and people might go to you because you are so good at handling chaos.
Oh yeah, I'm so great. Like they always say, come, Cheryl, I'm really stressed out today. Can you ground me? You know what I mean? Like, because I can move through stuff without getting, caught up in it. But it has, as with everything, it has its, but I think standing in the awareness of these things, right, is really the key, right? As a parent, just because obviously, and realizing that how you're responding to things is definitely, whether you think it is or not, it's absolutely impacting your kids.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And it's a journey, because there's so many things that we're not aware of, and there's so many layers that we discover later on. The main key is to be curious and to pay attention and notice things, particularly when you get triggered.
Right.
Because triggers, instead of seeing them as like aberrations or something awful, are an opportunity to say, oh, what's going on here? Why is this person triggering me? Why is this specific thing making me so upset?
Right.
And that becomes the way in which you grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So let's say we're a family, and I'm sitting down with my children, and we've just had, we'll say grandma or grandpa's passed away. What does that conversation look like?
How old are the children?
Let's say I'll actually go back to the age that my boys were, probably when their grandfather passed away. So we'll say like 6 and 8. Okay,
that's a good age. They're pretty reasonable human beings by that time. I would sit them down and I would explain what happened. This is your grandma and grandpa, or your husband's?
It was my.
I mean, your parents.
Yeah, it was my it was my dad, but it was a stepdad. But it was still their grandfather, and he was very involved in their lives. So
so you sit down and you talk about death. You talk about what that means, that you're not going to see that person anymore. You might invite them to share stories. This is very powerful, to share stories, because that's a way of creating a completion around that person. And for you to share your different perspectives, very powerful. That's why we have memorial services. It actually has a function. So you talk about that, and you talk about your feelings. Do you notice any kind of feelings? One of the key things I do with my clients is I teach them how to become aware of their feelings. Because for almost 50 years, I had no sense of feelings at all, except when they literally knocked me over. And so I developed tools and techniques for tapping in, feeling in. And I believe, well, I know that if you don't release those feelings, you tamp them down, they don't go away. They actually get stuck in the cells in your body.
Right.
They actually affect your physiology. And because there's chemistry, there are these hormones that are released. The exact same hormones are released in grief as in fear. It's the same hormones that activate. And if you don't release it, it's actually toxic to your body. So the first thing is to release the emotions. And so if you can teach your children, what do they call it? They call it emotional intelligence. I call it emotional hygiene. Let's teach our children not at the point that granddad died. Let's teach them at the point of when their hamster dies, or their dog dies, or their friend goes away and they really miss them. Let's invite them to share their feelings and cry, or not cry, but at least release those emotions.
Yeah. You're bringing up such a point in the moment, though, because and this is going to timeline this video just a little bit. So for those of you who watch this maybe a year from now, but everybody's in this current situation. So I don't think anybody's going to not understand the question I'm going to pose next. But right now, obviously, when people are passing away, there's sort of this moment where people can't really bring that closure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they're not allowed to have those services. They might not even be able to be in the presence of the person who's passing, which is horrific. It's absolutely horrific.
So a year from now, if we do fast forward, would you encourage those people to go back and do something, like to have some kind of, I mean, I know that the person's not there, but like,
yes.
I feel like something like where you invite the people in who would have cared about that person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I would definitely do that. But I would also do within the small nuclear family in which you are in each other's presence is do something right then.
Okay.
Right then. Do something where you sit around and share stories, you pull out photographs, maybe you have video, and you actually focus on the experience of that person, and then realizing that that person's gone and then they're not going to be around anymore.
Right.
And then if you're a spiritual family, inviting them to connect with that person on another level. Of course, I work with people around grief and loss. They talk about communicating with the spirits of their lost loved ones all the time. So inviting that as a possibility that you can continue to connect at a different level. And if it's young children, they may be connecting in ways that you can't even believe.
I know, it is very amazing. My both my parents have passed away, and my mom actually did come back and communicate with me. So it's kind of a fascinating story, which I won't share right now. But just like there was such a beauty in that connection that happened for me, and yeah, and I think just allowing it. But I could totally see that, and I could see actually maybe there's a way if you can't get together with your family, have a one of those Zoom calls where everybody's on.
Absolutely.
Because obviously people can't travel some right now and all of that. So anyway, just an interesting thought that I had as you were talking about that, because we do the ritual, if you will, kind of call it a ritual of having, a funeral and doing all of that, inviting in, and right now that's getting lost. And I'm just wondering what the domino effect of that,
So I think we are a pretty resilient species. I think we have right now at our disposal a way of connecting with each other, which is not face to face, but it's still better than nothing, better than letters, which would be a Zoom memorial service, in which maybe you made a video and maybe you had people do eulogies and share their stories. And what I would suggest, this is an extra little tip, is to make the experience multi-sensory. So of course on Zoom, we have the sound and we have the visual, and we could even be playing music. There's a way to play music. But what about taste and scent? Was there a perfume, or was there a scent that you related? Could you do that? Could you share that with the other people so that they could have that, make that scent available?
That's
or food, is there a particular food that person you associate with that person?
Right.
And so actually have it sensual. The body is a sensory organism. And so when we do that, we actually help it to absorb the information.
That's great. I love that. I think you should write a blog about that, because there's a lot of people that are trying to figure out how to handle this moment in time. But I think, I think that's beautiful. And sometimes even when someone passes, even not in the crazy times we're in, there's still not everybody that can make it to that would want to. So I think that would be a beautiful thing to be able to come up with those ideas and kind of honoring that process at the same time. So
one of the things that I remember, I did a lot of research when I was making my films, and there was this woman that I interviewed that never made it in my films yet, but she was a guide for people who were dying. And they had these cardboard coffins for if you're going to have somebody cremated. And the family would decorate the coffin with painting and magic markers. And so inviting creativity into the process is also hugely helpful.
Interesting. Wow. Well, okay. So amazingly, I know I'm always shocked. I looked up, we've been about 30 minutes, and that's about our timeline. But I want to put up a couple things because I want people to know where they can reach out to you for sure. And we have a couple things I'm going to throw up here on the screen. One is This is the website, secondchancesecrets.com. And that's, again, second spelled out. So I like to spell it out because somebody might be listening to this on a podcast down the road. But second, SECOND, chance, CHANCE, secrets, SECRETS.com. So secondchancesecrets.com. And I know you have some resources there as well. And then also, I'm going to put this one up, and I'm going to let you talk about it in terms of what they can get at your other location. Grief Essentials, GRIEF Essentials, ESSENTIALS.com. Grief Essentials. So what is it?
So Grief Essentials is a downloadable PDF. It's a guide for how to deal with your emotions and what you're going through after a significant loss. This is like really right as soon as it happens to you. Where second chances is when it's later down the line and you're actually ready to move on with your life and you need help with that. But Grief Essentials is right at the beginning. It's a lovely PDF with illustrations, so it's very child friendly. And you can actually talk to your children about those different pieces of advice that are given in that grief guide. And it comes with additional emails to help you go even deeper into that. So it's a really, really lovely process for going through grief. Now, if people want to go ahead and see the films, they would go to secretsoflifeanddeath.com because that was the name of the film series. And
so
go to the
secretsoflifeanddeath.com.
That's correct.
Where they would find. Okay, there you go. So she's got all kinds of amazing information. Great for the family to sit down at the kitchen table with kids too, which obviously that's what we're all about here. I always like to close out every show with a what we call a dot, which is a drop of thought. It's really a pearl of wisdom. So if you were going to leave a dot with our audience today, your drop of thought, what would that be for you?
The dot of thought would be curious about everything that comes down the pike, anything that's difficult. There is a gem. There is a lesson. There is something that you can learn and savor when you become curious and open to the experience as opposed to shutting down or resisting.
Lovely. Great. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here today with us. I'm going to just close out with my little dot, which is how I close out every show because it's really about the heartbeat of why I do what I do. But ripples don't flow in, they flow out. And if we really want to see change out in our world, then it starts with us and it starts in our own homes with our own families first. So join us next time as we continue the ripple of change and out in the world that we want to see and be a part of that. And thank you. Thank you for being here. This is a great conversation. I think I have more questions. I'm going to keep picking your brain when we're done here. So, you're amazing. Thank you so much for sharing today.
Thank you, Cheryl. It was such a delight to talk to you. This was wonderful.
Good. We'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.